Good afternoon, good evening, and hello, wherever you are from. Today, we're going to be talking about the 3 steps you need to master for any expansion. Yes, that's right. Global domination, global expansion. How do you enable your business to double its turnover, double the business, double the amount of units you can sell with the simple 3 steps to global expansion? I'm excited to be with you. I'm excited to have you with me. And I'm really, really excited to share these 3 simple strategies that you can utilize for your global domination of your brand. Let's get straight into it. I say that if I can. There we go. Okay, great. So we're going to do a bit of an introduction first. We're going to talk about where and what the opportunities are. I'm going to give you the 3 strategies to what an expansion should look like to make that simple and easy for you, and then give you a couple of options at the end. So my name's Andy Hooper. I'm the CEO at Global E-commerce Experts and Expandly, and I'm an investor at GE Capital. Now, we globally expand brands, and we're here to support and help sellers to do that. Now, I've been involved with e-commerce for many, many years. I started off as an Amazon seller and a flipper of eBay flipper. I'm not sure I've got the terminology right there, but eBay flipper, where I'd buy things and sell it on eBay, and then I'd start buying things from China and then selling them on Amazon. I started with these silicone watches that you'd put on your wrist that I sold to friends, family, and anyone that was willing to listen, along with lots of people on places like Amazon, which was a really, really exciting time for me, learning how to do something new and something different. And that opened up a whole world of opportunities and thoughts about what e-commerce is, how it works, and how I could work within that space. Now, roll on many, many years, and we've now successfully expanded 2,500 sellers that are just like you, that have got their own brand, and they are selling their products on the likes of Amazon, eBay, and many other platforms. So when you think about expanding, there's lots of different pieces to, you've got a current business, you've got a current brand, you've got a load of SKUs that you've got, and I'm going to come on to why would you expand, or why wouldn't you expand further down the line. But when you really think about expanding, you've got to think about some of these really, really simple things. It requires no additional products, no new products to be created, which means that you can take your current SKUs and sell them, but sell more of them. So there's going to be a whole bulk purchasing opportunities that come your way from that. But it also helps you diversify the risk by selling your products on more marketplaces in more countries. Gives you the opportunity to diversify the risk away from single platform, single marketplace opportunities. Now, obviously, increase in sales mean you can optimize your logistics. You might be able to get tax benefits from local governments and places like that, which will give you opportunity to sell in new regions. And obviously, the more products you sell will give you greater negotiation power. But obviously, some of those things really, really focus your mind in other areas of, okay, I can get my brand to a global audience. And what the benefits of having that to a global audience? Well, when you think about your brand, if you don't take your product to a new region, the chances are someone's going to take that product to that region for you. And for lots of sellers that we work with and brands, protecting the brand is as important as the additional revenue, to make sure that nobody else is doing those things. So let's talk about that global domination. Where are e-commerce sales right now, and what does that look like? Well, this is a stat from Statista. I think it's 2022, and this is the revenue worldwide. Now, this is the revenue worldwide on all of their marketplaces. So when you look at the China one specifically, things like Alibaba, which people may well have listened to this, started buying products from at some point, does include those stats. So the 875 billion that you see for the US, well, most of those products could have been bought on a marketplace in China. So there is a balancing act to be had with the Chinese data, but it does really show you where the strength of e-commerce starts and flows through. Obviously, China's a great market. The US is an amazing market. And then you get to everybody else. And I think when you're looking at your global domination and where you want to start, what you want to do is think about how can you do it simply and easily, number one. Secondly, how can you group countries together via continent to make that easy for you, and where makes sense, and also where might you like to go on holiday? You know, some of those options, if you start selling in that region, how do you understand the culture? How do you understand the nuances in the different locations and where you're going to sell? Well, one great way to do that is to go and visit it. So there's lots of different options there. Now, as you look through, I sort of group these into several different areas. You've got the States as a North American sort of area. Obviously, you've got the United States there and Canada. They go really, really well together. Then you've got some of the Asian areas. You've got the China, Japan, South Korea as another one. You've got India and Indonesia possibly together in a certain area. And then you've got the European ones of Germany, the UK, France. And what comes off that list as the next 10 is mainly the European ones. So you've got sort of a North American, a European, Asian split between those, which really gives you a great understanding of, okay, where am I going to go? What does that look like? What's the ease and access to those places that really helps you to support you, to help you with your brand and your expansion? And when you're looking at that global domination, where's going to be the best thing for your brand as well? Where is the brand most likely going to resonate? Because your brand might not resonate everywhere around the world. So you need to consider also what that might look like. Okay, let's just touch on a couple of the markets. North American market, 580 million people. Amazon's got 197 million monthly Prime users, 70% use Prime, and it's 23 countries. Now, that stat did hit me as something I hadn't really recognized, because when you think about it, you've got United States, you've got Canada, you've got Mexico, but then there's a whole load of islands in there as well that you need to consider that come involved in those figures. Second area is Europe, 550 million people, similar amount of people in the two regions. The difference being there's 28 countries, but all of those 28 countries really speak a different language. So when you're expanding to Europe, it opens up a whole load of differences culturally from a language point of view that you do need to consider. And then you've got the EU versus Europe. And I just want to touch this off because for those who are listening who aren't local to where I am, I'm in England and that's where I'm based. So I just want to touch and cover off the EU versus Europe piece, because the UK, United Kingdom, England, where I'm based, is still part of Europe. So when we're going to talk about Europe, Europe includes the UK, England, Scotland, Ireland, and Wales. We are no longer part of the European Union because of something that happened called Brexit. What that means is that we're no longer part of the customs agreements, the free movement of goods and trade that we once had with Europe. Now, there's a few differences that come with that. So we're part of Europe, but we're no longer part of the European Union. But overall, there's still the ability to sell throughout Europe, including the UK. All right. So here's some of the reasons that sellers do expand. And obviously, some of these are going to be pretty obvious. I think the first one is market growth, being able to grow your brand and get your brand to more people. You know, the more people that buy your brand, the more people that recognize your brand, the more globally your reach, the bigger brand domination you're going to be able to have, and therefore protection of that brand. Second thing is the diversification. By selling on more marketplaces in more countries, you're reducing the risk of having the slap by one of the marketplaces or by one of the platforms or one of the social content platforms. Because what you want to be able to do is make sure that your products can be sold in lots of different places to minimize the risk of the stock being shut down or shut off. Next thing, it gives you new customers. The ability to have more customers in more regions gives you much more flexibility. Now, part of the advantage of expanding is you don't need any new products. Well, the advantage of once you have expanded to all those locations, when you do create a new product, is you've got more customers to sell that product to if you've got the ability to communicate effectively with them. I mean, the competitive advantage piece, I mean, I think that comes without say in as far as you've got a bigger brand. bigger say. You're going to be able to get bigger bulk deals. You're going to be able to get much better strategic partnerships with bigger brands. You know, if you're working on different marketplaces, it's going to give you more say if you've got much more sales and more people in other countries. Technology and infrastructure enables that to happen. You know, if you are selling on the likes of Amazon, you can sell in 24 countries overnight practically with using one marketplace. Same with eBay. You know, the ability to be able to expand your brand to all of these new countries using the same software to enable that is magic. You know, if you're currently using that, that is a massive opportunity that you shouldn't diversify away from. You've got the economies of scale. We talked about that bulk buying. You know, if you are going to get, you know, discount by ordering more minimum order quantities, then, you know, shipping those to 2 different locations or 5 different locations means that you've got much better buying power with your manufacturer, which means you're going to get your products cheaper. So your cost of goods is going to come down, which is a massive factor in supporting your profitability of your business. Seasonal variability. I love this one. You know, you've got the northern and southern hemisphere. If you've got a seasonal product, let's say it's a summer product, the great news is that it's summer somewhere else in the world. So if you're selling in the northern hemisphere and you're selling that product April to October and it's a seasonal summer product, the great news is if you flip that and sell that down under, what you're going to be able to do is sell that in the opposite times of the year from September through to March. That's going to give you much bigger opportunity to get your minimum order quantities down, as a great example, but give you that flow of stock out of your manufacturer to those other parts of the world. And I think that is one of the really big things that a lot of the sellers we work with see as really powerful. Brand recognition, we've talked about that a lot. You know, being able to get your brand into other countries so that somebody else doesn't is really key. You've got the regulatory opportunities. You know, where is a similar regime, if you like, to where you're currently selling, and how easy is it to make sure you've mastered product compliance? Is there tax incentives, trade agreements that enable those products to be sold easily? Will you be able to set up a company there easy, or do you even need to set a company up? How will the local government in those regions support your brand and actually growing and taking your business overseas? So there's lots of amazing things you can do that have reasons why you should expand. But obviously there's reasons why people don't expand. So I think one of the big ones is resource constraints. So if you are not big enough to be able to expand, that's going to become difficult. And what I mean by resources is there's several parts to resources. Oh, the light's gone out in the office. Let's give that a little whirl. So, you know, I think there's different ways of looking at resources. I think the number one resource is cash, time, and staffing. So depending on where you are in your actual journey is going to depend on whether expansion is actually right for you or not. You need to make sure you've got the resources to be able to do it. And obviously there's different resources. If you've got more time but less cash, then you'll have to invest more time to make it happen and learn as you go. If you have got the cash but you don't have the people, well, then you need to outsource to the right people in the right place to enable that to happen. If you have got time, a cash, and people, well, the world is your oyster to that expansion. I think some of the reasons they don't expand, great one, is the cultural and language barriers. You need to make sure that your brand is the right fit and culture for that brand. No, your brand is the right fit for that culture. And when you're selling in new languages, you might need to translate your products. Might need to translate your instruction manuals. You might need to translate your app. You might need to and so on. So there's lots of different things to consider. Obviously, then you've got the logistics. How do you get stock into that region? How do you get the stock direct to consumer? How do you do the returns? So there's lots of things there that people need to consider. You've got the compliance, the business compliance and the product compliance. I mean, that can seem like a headache just in itself. So you need to consider what that looks like. Payment, how do you get paid in another country? How do you do the Forex trading of foreign exchange trading, to make sure that you get the exchange rate right? And there's a whole load more things to consider there. Keeping the brand consistent. You know, if you've got it selling in one marketplace, one region, how do you make sure that the brand comes across in exactly the way you want it to come across in those other regions as well? And if it does come across in that way, will that be offensive anyway, or will that be okay? Competition risks. I see this as an advantage in as far as, you don't want your competition to expand their brand rather than you, but also opening up to new marketplaces, new countries, also gives you the thought process that actually, if you are opening up in those new countries, how much competition is there? How much will you sell? Who's already there? Who isn't already there? And so on. And then you've got to consider the geopolitical piece. If there's some rebels in the Red Sea that don't want ships and containers to go through the Red Sea, how do they go through? What effect will that have? What political decisions are being made in that country that affect how your brand will sell and whether it won't sell? So you do need to consider the stability of that region. And then you've got the technology and infrastructure limitations of, if you want to sell, let's take Australia as a great example, you've got an amazing opportunity to sell, let's say on Amazon in Australia, but the country is so vast from an infrastructure point of view that actually getting next day delivery to the majority of people in Oz is really, really difficult. So you've got to think about what that looks like and how you might alter that in different places. And then what technology is there you could use that, I've got to expand to a new country. I'm going to need more software. I'm going to need. All of those things come across as really, really difficult. Well, here's the great news. So the great news is we've expanded 2,500 sellers in typically North American sellers into Europe. And what that did was help us to develop a structure, a pathway, a success pathway for people that want to expand. Now, this is the pathway. It's a 7-step process in order to help you expand. But what I'm going to do today is I'm going to actually break that down much simpler than the 7 steps. And what I want to give you is the 3 steps for a successful expansion. Now, what we come to realize was when we were doing this for North American to European sellers, actually this process is exactly the same. There's 3 things that you have to get completely dialed in and understand before your expansion. Yes, there's the 7 steps that break it down into much more detail. But before you're expanding, you want to make sure that you've done the market research. There's, what does the competition look like? How much could you sell, etc. All of those things are definitely a must. But when you're looking at the actual expansion, what are the 3 things you need to solve? And that's what I want to give you today. These are the 3 things that for any expansion anywhere in the world, you need to solve. Now, the names. So these are this is the strategy. The tactics of how you do that in each region may be slightly different. And that's all good. When you start talking about tax, there's different tax in different regions. You've got VAT in the UK. You've got sales tax in the US. You've got GST in Canada and Australia. There's lots of different terminology, but tax is tax. We all understand the term tax. So I'm going to give you the strategies of the 3 steps to a successful expansion. The tactics in each region will be slightly different, which I can't go through all today, but I'm going to give you the 3 strategies. So the first strategy you've got to solve is compliance. There's 2 stages to compliance. There's business compliance and there's product compliance. So I touched on the tax, so I'll start on that piece. So the first thing is you need to get your business compliant with the region you're selling into. Now, one of those big things is tax. You need to make sure that you're paying tax in that region. Now, every region's got slightly different ways of doing things, but the simplest way to look at it is if you sell a product in a region, the government wants a form of thank you for enabling you to sell it in that region, and that's called tax. Now, there's different ways of doing things, whether you set up entities, whether you register for VAT in new regions. There's lots of different ways of doing it. Typically, the way we recommend is you stick with your entity that you've got, and then you expand with that entity. And what you do is you register for, in the UK, for example, you register for VAT, value added tax in that region. You can do the same in Australia and Canada. You register for your business you've already got for tax in those regions, which enables you to pay tax, say thank you to the government for enabling you to sell those products in those regions. Now, that tax piece is absolutely crucial. There's lots of different things to consider, but you need to make sure you understand the regime of tax in that area or work with a partner that does. Now, we've done hundreds of webinars and podcasts on VAT in UK and Europe of what that looks like and how you can utilize that. There's lots of different things you need to consider. There's lots of different options, but the number one thing is wherever you're expanding to, you need to pay some tax. So that's the first thing. The second thing is product compliance. You need to make sure that your product is compliant with the region you're selling. And there's three things you need to consider. Really, really simple. Number one, what regulations does your product fall under? So let me say that again. What regulations does your product fall under? So what you need to do is you need to identify the regulations in that country, whether it's a medical device, a electrical device, a cosmetic, whatever it happens to be. You need to identify what the overall regulations are, and then the individual standard or regulation in each of those countries that it actually goes to. So you need to consider what that is. So the first thing is understand what regulations your product falls under. Number two, make sure your product is compliant with those regulations and you've got the certification to show that you are actually compliant. Because when we get to the customs piece in a minute, hold that thought, you're going to be able to understand why. So the second part is make sure your product is compliant with those regulations and you've got the proof to make sure that is the case. And the third thing is making sure your product is labeled correctly according to those regulations and making sure that any instructions or labels are translated to the languages that are relevant to those countries that you're going to be selling the product to. So compliance, wherever you're going in the world, is two things: business compliance, therefore paying tax. And the second one is making sure the product is compliant with the regulations so that you can sell them. Okay. And in fact, I had a slide on it all along. So a couple of things I missed on the business side there is intellectual property. Do you need trademarks? You need to consider that. And also from a business side, you need to make sure you've got a payment processing gateway. All right, let's go to secret number two, logistics. Now, that's probably no secret to anyone. You need to be able to get your products from manufacturer to your customer in that region. It literally is as simple as that. But what are the different things you need to do in order to do that? Well, you need to ship, air freight, train, road, whatever that looks like, those products from the manufacturer to a warehouse facility, distribution facility, fulfillment center, whatever your favorite terminology is, into that region. But before it goes, most likely when it goes from manufacturer to warehouse, you're going to need to do customs. Customs is vital to get right. You need to make sure you're working with the right customs broker in the region that understands what your products you sell are and how to get them into the region. Let's take organic. If you sell organic products, you need to make sure that the person shipping those products with the customs and they do it, or the customs broker understands how to do organic products. We see clients fall down with that time and time again, and it's really, really important you make sure that you understand that. And I use that as an example because, you know, medical products might be the same and so on. But this is where, when you're going through customs, you need to make sure you've got the certification from step one. Compliance, product compliance, certification is when you need this most. So what you then need to be able to do is get it through customs. You then get it into a warehouse. You need to then make sure that your warehouse can do what you need it to do. B2B, can it ship to Amazon FBA? Can it ship to wholesalers? Can it send to distributors? Can it send to local retail venues? Can they also do B2C? Yeah, can they do business to consumer sales? Are you selling from a marketplace? You want to do seller fulfilled prime, whatever that looks like. And then the last thing is, can you do direct consumer? Can you pick and pack single use items to go direct to your consumer so that they can receive the goods? And then the last thing, if you're selling products, you're going to need to be able to now the returns. So have you got a return solution that enables your products to be returned to a local hub in each country to enable your products to be able to be returned? Because if buyers can't see that things can be returned easily, it will impact on sales. So that's step two. Step two is making sure you've got logistics, everything from the manufacturer all the way through to the customer. and back to your distribution center to enable you to be able to resell those products or whatever that looks like for your returns. And this is really, really important. Don't understand it. Don't understand, it's not the right word, but don't think that this is easy, because the process of working with really good 3PLs in a different region is never as easy as you think. You know, we've got warehouses in the UK and Netherlands. We support hundreds of sellers with this, but you have to make sure that 3PL is right for you. You need to make sure they've got the right systems, the right processes, the right software, etc. So you need to make sure that you've got the ability to work with the right partner for you. And this is a really, really tough decision. So you've got to make sure you're really, really nailing this wherever you are in the world. And the third one is online distribution. So what marketplaces are you going to sell your products? Which platforms are going to be right to sell them on? Do you need an omni-channel approach? Now, what I would say is that for the virtually every single seller, the omni-channel approach when you're expanding is not something you do on day one. If you are already selling on Amazon, for example, then just expand on Amazon. Get that piece done. But let's take Europe as a great example. You won't be successful expanding to Europe if you only sell on Amazon. You do need to expand onto other marketplaces, because that's where the additional profit comes. Because selling on one channel is great, but actually you need to eke out those. In virtually every European country, Amazon isn't the biggest marketplace. Amazon's the second biggest marketplace. So you're missing a massive opportunity if you're not selling on other platforms. Obviously, other things you need to consider is the translations and where you're going to sell. So you need to identify the countries you want to sell, what's right for the brand, what's not, but identify what those marketplaces are and have the right software to enable that to happen. Because what you don't want is 20 pieces of software, 20 marketplaces. It becomes a real headache. So you really need to work and focus on actually, how am I going to distribute this online distribution and how am I going to make that happen? So they're the three things you need to consider. Make sure you've got the compliance dialed in, both for your business and your products. You need to make sure you've got a logistics solution that enables everything from the manufacturer all the way through to your customer and back. And then thirdly, you need to make sure you've got your online distribution network solved so you can sell your products. And it's not all of them on day one, but that's by building out a strategy in order to make that happen. So what I want to touch on very briefly is this is our services and how we operate, but this really is the three core things separated. So if you look at these things, you've got to make sure you've got the product labeling. You need an address locally. You need to do your tax. You need to set up a marketplace. You need to ship. You need to get through customs. You get in a warehouse. You fulfill your products. You return. You need technology to enable the omni-channel approach, and then you need to optimize what you're doing. But for me, that is the process. That's what you need to go through as a way of working with expansion. That is the expansion blueprint, if you like. Now, if you expand into Europe, yes, we'd love to help you, and we can help you all with all of those global e-commerce experts. That's what we do. And Expandly is our own proprietary software that enables the omni-channel listing management team. So I just want to touch very briefly here on getting you into our cohort, if you like. Our vision is to globally expand brands. That's my vision for the business. That's our vision's dream. We want to globally expand brands. So that's what we're looking to do. If you're listening to this and you want to globally expand your brand, you're in the right place. Our mission is to change the way the world expands their business. If you are a huge, large organization, expanding your business is very straightforward. There are many, many thousands of people that would do that for vast sums of money, but there are also many, many logistics providers and companies that will do large businesses. We're on a mission to make that much simpler, much better for the world of SMEs. We want to change the way the world expands their business, and we're doing that through our through our proprietary software, and I'll explain more about that. But what I'd invite you to do, this is my only ask for today, is that if you want your brand globally dominate, and join the Expanders. It's a tribe of entrepreneurs that want to globally dominate. I'm going to be leading that. It's new, and I want my brand to globally dominate. I'd love to talk to other entrepreneurs that want their business to globally dominate, because together we can globally dominate. dominate. Okay, so you got two options. First one is you can do nothing and forget all about it. The second one is you can do something. Now, if that's you, what you're going to be able to do is you need to consider whether you've got the costs and the resources to be able to do that. Because what you need to think about is how much is it going to cost and what are the resources to make that happen. And you need to decide what that looks like. When you're expanding, when you're looking to expand your business, you need to decide and make sure that you've got the resources to enable that to happen. So first thing is you can do something or you can do nothing. That's completely up to you. I've got no ask other than that. My one ask is, hey, I'd love you to join our LinkedIn or Facebook community, The Expanders. It's new. We're just getting it up and running. But if you want to do this and you are keen to learn more, then go and look at all of our content. We've done a huge amount of content on podcasts, on YouTube, to show you exactly what the 7 steps are and how that all works. There's huge hours and hours and hours of content that's going to enable you to make that happen. If you follow that and you watch that and you want to learn more and you'd love to talk to us further, hey, go do that. I'm here to tell you you should be expanding. Not that you should use us, although it'd be a great option, would be my guess, but we're here to support you. If you want to touch off, please do get in touch via LinkedIn and you can connect with me and I can put in touch with one of our success managers that can talk about how that might work for you. Okay, so I'm going to open up for questions. I've got some questions that have come through and I will ask some of those off. So first one I've got is about, what about wholesalers? And I think this is a really, really good question because wholesalers are, a great opportunity for people expanding. But here comes the big but. The big but there is, can you get those products in region? Because if you're buying those products in your home region and then you're looking to sell, ship those to another region, that starts to become really, really expensive. The other thing is you need to think about the compliance of those products, because can you change the labeling on those products? Can you change what it says on it? Now, if you are working with a wholesaler and you can get those products in other countries, that's the way to do it. That's the best way to do it. But also, it might not be that you actually expand with the same brands. It might be you think, hey, I like the sound of this expansion. I'm very, very good at doing the wholesale. How do I wholesale with something similar, something different in a new region? So there could be other ways of doing those things. Another question, what about wholesalers expanding brands to resell? So yes, that's totally the case, but you need to consider your margins when you're doing that. Margins is the big thing that you need to consider to make sure there's enough profit in that to be able to make that work. And the key thing to think about is what that you should consider is the market research. You want to have a look at the market research. So if you've got something you're working with in your home and you want to expand with that, one thing you need to do is you need to work out, is anyone else selling it? How much are they selling it for? And what does the average price look like? And what are the costs to enable that to happen? So they're the things you need to consider. You need to have a very, very good idea of what the costs are of your business and what those costs look like in order to make that expansion work. Our team can support you with that to give you a breakdown, so you've got all of those facts and figures when you're doing that. Okay. If you want to get in contact with me, scan this. That'll take you through to my LinkedIn. I'd love to talk to you further. But apart from that, I'd like to thank you for attending. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for thinking about expanding. Expanding is a great opportunity. It won't be right for everyone, but it is for those that want their brand to be. My name's Andy Hooper. I'm the CEO of Global E-Commerce Experts and Expandly, and we're here to globally expand brands. Thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to seeing you on our next webinar next week.